Welcome to the next video. Let's talk deposit and why it's important and what do you need it for. Okay. So what is a deposit? Deposit is paid by the buyer for a successful purchase agreement. So after you find a home that you love and you start negotiating with the seller and you guys come to an agreement that is put forth in the purchase agreement, right? Once that is accepted, you will put in the agreement that you agree to put up a deposit. And typically the deposit would go into escrow 1 to 3 days after the contract is accepted. Okay. In a crazy seller's market, right, this deposit might be required the next day or within 24 hours, something like that. Right, so that way if you don't put in your deposit right away within 24 hours or less, the seller can then move on from your purchase agreement because you are not performing as the buyer and go accept another contract. So a lot of times in a seller's market, when there's multiple offers, they want you to get that deposit in quick and show that you are serious. And if not, they're going to move on and go to the next buyer, right? And like, what is the how much of a deposit, right? It's usually between 1 to 3% of the purchase price. Sometimes you can start with 1%, but then the seller is going to be like, hey, I want you to put in 3% for your deposit. They have the right to request increase in deposit. So don't be shy if they do that, agree or don't agree, right? But it can be adjusted just depending on what you guys negotiate. But this deposit also goes towards your down payment. Okay, so if you put the 3% down as a deposit, it sits in escrow, and then as you go through the escrow process and you move on to closing, that deposit then moves over to be considered part of your down payment, and that's where that deposit goes. Okay, it's not just there and you don't get it back, right? If you're a VA or USDA loan, you're getting one of those, you are going to still put up a deposit. You still have to put that up, but when you go to closing, escrow will then send that deposit back to you. Okay, so there is that. And this portion is required up front, right? So down payment you don't need until you close, but this deposit is going to be required right away. It does need to be put up in escrow and it will leave your account. Now, if the agreement fails and you guys don't come to a conclusion on the agreement, you will be sent your deposit back unless you are breaching the contract and failing to perform. Then the seller can request to keep your deposit. And if you do not have any contingencies, the seller can keep your deposit. And you basically agree that this deposit is your last way out of the contract. So that's what happens there, right? You can send in your deposit via check, money order, or bank transfer, so wire transfer. You will do that through to escrow. You will send it directly to escrow. You do not send it directly to the seller. And then once escrow sends you their wire instructions, they will never send you another email that says, "Oops, wrong ones." They don't do that. That's a phishing scam. Be careful of that. And then always, even before you send it, call, verify the wire instructions with escrow. Make sure you're sending it to the right place and that everything will be set, right? Okay. Now, what's the reason for the deposit? For a buyer, this is showing the seller that you have commitment, right? What commitment is that? That's commitment to purchasing their home, because now you've put up a deposit, you have money on the line, you have something to lose. And the seller would receive would receive the deposit as compensation if you were to breach the contract and walk away from the deal when all contingencies have been removed. So if you're making an offer in a crazy seller's market with no contingencies, the way out of that contract is your deposit, right? Or if you just never put up your deposit and you decide, you get cold feet right away and you just don't put up your deposit and you tell the seller to move on, that's basically all you have, right? So that's one reason why sellers try to push for a deposit as soon as possible, especially if there's no contingencies. So you will lose that if you do not have contingencies to back out. Okay, and don't have this money shouldn't be a part of tied up in bank accounts, right? Or if you have it in multiple spots. You want it to be in one location, one account, in either your checking or your savings, right? Easy to access, needs to be liquid because you got to move it right away. And this is important to have this ready to go while you're searching for a home, because if you find the right home that you love, the deposit's already there, you're not moving money around the accounts, and if you start moving money around, the lender is going to come and look at you and say, okay, now I have to source the funds from each one of these accounts, and you got to give them bank statements for all those accounts if you move it from different accounts into one, right? So have it already ready to go, have it sitting in there, have it be seasoned in the bank for 2 to 3 months, so the lender is not requiring you to send them all of your banks, okay? So that's the reason for a deposit. Let's go on to the next video.